Hey guys, welcome to another episode of SEO on Air. Our special guest for today is the executive editor of Search Engine Roundtable, the news editor at Search Engine Land, a former news editor at Search Engine Watch. I know most of you would have guessed him by now. He's also well known for his exceptional work ethic, a no nonsense approach to covering SEO news, and a genuine dedication to our community. Guys, it's an honor to welcome Mr. Barry Shwartz to the Stan Ventures Show. Hello, Barry.
Hey, how are you? Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much. Barry, we've been following you a lot, almost more than a decade, and you are someone who keeps a close watch of the SEO industry. So you've been writing a lot about SEO and have the pulse of the whole industry for more than a decade. So let me first ask you about search engines. Do you think Bing, DuckDuckGo, and these other search engines are doing enough to break the monopoly of Google?
I mean, it's not what I think, it's what is the reality. The reality is no, they haven't. I know Microsoft, Bing has always conveyed that they have like 30% share globally. But
Yep.
if you look at anybody's analytics, it's always like, I don't know, 90% plus Google. The rest is
Mhm.
divided up between Bing, Yahoo, and like some other smaller search engines. DuckDuckGo is not even on the map, although there's been recent news
Mhm.
that Apple should potentially look to buy DuckDuckGo, so they wouldn't depend on Google. That came from like a Bernstein financial analyst. Although I don't know if it's going to happen or not. And would Apple? That's another interesting conversation. Would Apple and the money behind Apple be able to make DuckDuckGo actually compete against Google? And you would think the same thing would have happened with Bing, because Microsoft has tremendous amount of money, and they would be able to make Microsoft Bing a lot more competitive than it is today. But it really hasn't really surpassed that like 5-10% market share mark.
Absolutely. And with Google tightening the screws on some of the SEO practices these days, so do you think there is still enough left in the tank for the SEOs?
uh, for SEOs to do their job. Yeah, I mean, I think SEO is a
Yeah.
lot different than it was 10 years ago. And it's not just about, trying to figure out what weights and what ranking signals Google uses. It's more about building really great websites. There's obviously technical SEO, there's content marketing, there's a lot of other things you could do in the SEO space. But ultimately, it's not like getting links with PageRank or domain authority. It's not about that anymore. It should never have been about that. But back in the old days, it was easy to say, let me go ahead and buy 15 links that have a PageRank score of 8 or something and rank for whatever I want to. Now it's more about really you have to spend time building a really great site, really great content, get people to notice that content and link to it. So I think that's still the case. I think SEOs still have to do that, and it's more about building. It's more professional SEO than it was back in the old days. So I think there's a lot of SEO out there. It's probably even harder now to do SEO than it was. Definitely harder now to do SEO now than it was years ago. So yeah, for sure, SEO is not something you should shy away from. It's something that is here for the long term.
Absolutely. And we moved more towards the technical SEO, technical side of things, I guess.
Um, yeah, yes and no. I mean, there's depends on what you're doing. So technical SEO is obviously very important now for things around JavaScript and really large websites that might have crawling issues and crawl budget and stuff like that, because you can tweak things out. But I mean, it's not just about technical SEO, because back in the old days, technical SEO was more about making a content management system that didn't produce URLs or produce weird URL parameters that dynamically changed every single time you loaded the page. So every single page load was a new URL. And that was the technical SEO issues, was can you build a site that's search engine friendly? Now
Right.
it's less about that, because you buy content management systems out of the box, like WordPress or whatever it might be. They're all search engine friendly by default. They have plugins, they have all these amazing tools, maybe Yoast and so forth, that make your site very, very search engine friendly. Add their structured data, add this, all that other rich results and stuff like that to the pages themselves. So you have to do very little in terms of thinking out the basics when it comes to SEO. When it comes to technical SEO, now it's more about you have to go ahead and maintain a very custom built website that might need that type of stuff, or around JavaScript based websites, Angular, all those types of React, all those types of platforms that might not be as search engine friendly like the old days of SEO.
Right.
And there's things around crawl budget and stuff like that you could kind of obsess about, but I'm not sure how much time you need to spend about crawl budget.
Okay. Great. And we know you that you keep track of the algorithm updates as well. And in fact, you write a lot about it. Most of us, first of all, know about an algorithm update only when you tweet it and when you blog about it. So, however, recent days there's quite a lot of changes happening. There's a lot of updates coming in, and even for white hat SEOs, it's creating a kind of a fear factor. So, what SEO strategy, according to you, is like future proof from being affected by these algorithm updates?
So here's a little plug. I'm not sure when this is going to be published. I'm giving a big presentation for free at a conference called XMX. It's going to be XMX Next. I'm actually going through about 20 years of algorithm updates.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's on June 23rd. It's free, you can register. And I'm going to be talking for about a half hour on algorithm updates and where they've gone from where they are now, and what that kind of shows. But basically, the short answer is, you shouldn't be really like, oh, we shouldn't be panicked about these algorithm updates. You should just keep building your website so that it's the best website out there, easier said than done. You should basically go ahead and build the website that Google wants to rank, and that is future proof for algorithm updates. So if you're chasing links, or if you're chasing different, like guest blog posts is a big topic today in the search community. But if you're chasing these small little things that, these are tactics that you can use today that might not work tomorrow, you're kind of always going to be one step behind. When it comes to the algorithm updates, you just want to say, all right, what can I do with my website that will make it better for my users, better than the competitors, and keep thinking like that and keep adding onto your website. You have to constantly change. Google's constantly changing, and always try to be one step ahead or two steps ahead of Google, because Google's just going to keep improving and try to keep making their algorithms better. And you want to make sure that your site is always seen in Google's eyes as the most authoritative and the most in terms of quality content and so forth. So just keep improving your website. Don't be afraid to change. Don't be afraid to try new things, and just make things better every single day, not just for Google, but for your search engine, for SEO and so forth.
Awesome. Yeah, and just following the rules of the game with the Google, not trying to game the system, right?
For sure.
Great. So so now let's look a bit more deeper into the SERPs, Barry. So now that the new SERP features, which directly takes the user to the particular section highlighted within the page, it's also live. And is Google trying to transform itself into a knowledge hub? Because it quite, I mean, I know most of these are pretty obvious, but is this recent update, especially after it started taking a user particularly to a particular section, then is that a signal that they're transforming into a complete knowledge hub?
So it's interesting. I mean, that's the question people have been asking since Google came out with the knowledge panel, knowledge graph, and those types of answers, even featured snippets. And it's not like Google wants to replace all answers. Obviously, Google wants to be a place people go to get all those answers.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like Google's like, all right, we don't need content publishers. We don't need SEOs. We need them in order to serve the answers, because without content, we're not going to be able to go ahead and provide answers. I know Google recently launched, actually not recently, in certain in industries and countries, I think in India and so forth, something called the Question Hub, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And the Question Hub was basically a way for, like, if Google doesn't have an answer, doesn't have good search results, it wants to tell publishers, hey, here's content you can write about that nobody's writing about yet that need answers.
Yep.
And I guess you've seen it a lot more in certain regions. So
Mm-hmm.
it just recently started happening more so in the US. And it's very interesting to see that, because again, Google's like pleading with publishers, we need this content, we don't have answers. So I don't think it's ever going to be a point where Google's going to be like, hey, we don't need publishers, because Google can't write this content themselves. But with certain things like facts, like how old is this person, or how, who won this sports game, or, what's the weather, that's pulled from licensed databases for the most part, or Wikipedia.
Yep.
But I still don't think like Google wants to build a web search experience where publishers feel they're getting absolutely nothing from it. It's a kind of this line that Google doesn't want to cross, where when they first launched it, they didn't even include, when they first launched feature snippets, I don't think they even included actual links to the publisher's website. And then SEOs and publishers went crazy. What are you doing? You're stealing my content. So they added the links, they added the references.
Yeah.
But as you see, it might not send as much traffic. Certain things don't send as much traffic to your website than other ones. But I think any SEO these days would be like, I'd rather be the featured snippet than not be.
Yeah.
So it's SEOs want it, they don't want it. Publishers want it, they don't want it. Google needs it and they want it. So it's kind of like balancing that line. And I know Rand Fishkin's, his study around 0 clicks and so forth.
Yep.
It's just this new world we're in. Again, things are going not just desktop search, not just mobile search, but voice search. And you can't necessarily list out 10 blue links in voice search. You have to give an answer. And you're not going to necessarily get that on voice search.
Absolutely. Yeah. So now that will be like directly taken up by this content and stuff. But what happens to these descriptions? Because we know meta descriptions no longer a ranking factor, and I know there are sometimes the meta descriptions are lengthier, sometimes it is too short. So what exactly is the best practices that people can follow when it comes to meta descriptions? Or first of all, do they even care about it anymore? Or will Google in the future start directly picking up, just like how they did it with the featured snippets? Are they going to directly take it up from the based on the user's intent? Are they going to directly take it up from the content itself from the particular website?
Yeah, so you don't need to necessarily spend time on meta descriptions. I know, let's start with meta keywords. Google says they ignore them completely, so just ignore those. Microsoft Bing at one point said they were dead. Now they're saying maybe not. We'll see. Again, don't worry about it. I wouldn't spend your time writing meta keywords. Meta descriptions, Google will write them if you don't have them, and often Google will ignore them based on the query. So if somebody searches for something and it might not match properly the meta description you have, it might use content from the page that matches. So I wouldn't go crazy about meta descriptions. A lot of publishers just use the X number of characters from the first content on a piece of content on the page, and that's fine. Even you see with featured snippets, Google's recently doing these highlight snippets of content. So it might take content from the middle of the page to provide a feature snippet and then anchor you down and highlight the content on that page, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't spend too much time on meta descriptions. If you could write them, great. I know when Google came out with a feature, what's it called? It was a voice search feature where it would read articles to you. Speakable markup, it's called. I don't know if it's still available. It's called speakable markup. And I had added a new box on my CMS and my content management system for the speakable markup. So I'll type in, what do I want the speakable markup to say when somebody finds my article on voice search? But it's not really something that many publishers could do. They can't spend all this time writing speakable markup and meta descriptions and meta keywords, and then the OG stuff for Facebook versus Twitter versus Insta, whatever it might be. So if there's any ways to automate that stuff by saying, all right, we want to use X number of characters from this, or use this content block or whatever it might be, then you should find ways to do that to make it a little bit easier. Of course, if you have infinite time and infinite resources, yeah, sure, go ahead and write everything perfectly in your meta description, all your different markups, different content for Facebook versus Twitter versus whatever is always great to do. But if you can't, then find ways to, optimize that.
Awesome. It's good that you touched upon that, especially on the voice search, Barry. So there is a common commotion that, yes, of course, Google picks up the answers from the search queries, from the answer box and stuff. But is it something like, because some people used to say they are going to put up a lot of podcasts, a lot of audio content so that Google can listen to it and even use it. So is this like, so this voice search is going to be entirely dependent on these knowledge graphs and all the other things, or is Google also going to pick up, listen to the audios and start picking up answers from that as well for using on the Google Home?
So I think they've actually announced it. What they say? They said not too long ago that they're actually going to be able to listen to that audio files and actually serve up snippets of answers from those audio files. I haven't seen much of this live. I think it's more of a mobile feature, but they definitely said they are starting to parse out the audio file content from that and actually serve up those snippets. I think I covered it a year or two ago, but I haven't really seen much of it where they're actually like, all right, listening to it, and they're going to go ahead and serve up those in mobile where you click play and it'll actually share that answer with you from podcasts specifically. Because those pushing podcasts, or they were pushing podcasts significantly last year. You see they already do that with YouTube videos with the in this video segment where they actually highlight a video in the mobile search results, and then let you jump to different areas of the video.
Yeah.
And of course, the automatic transcriptions are pretty impressive across YouTube. So I don't see why they can't apply the same technology for, audio comprehensive for that type of stuff as well.
Great. So that should be exciting times ahead. Great. So
More and more content. So
right. So Barry, you have a special bonding with some of the top SEOs, including your ex-colleague Danny Sullivan, who's currently with Google. So based on your interactions, so what do you think that one big change which in the SERPs that could happen in the coming days or years that we all should be aware of from Google perspective?
So the biggest thing that Google announced is the product experience update. So the core Web Vitals stuff. I don't know how big that's going to be. I don't think it's going to be a massive change. I don't think you're going to see rankings drop significantly across any vector, in any industry. I don't think it's going to be massive. I don't know. I mean, these core updates are still fairly big. What's happening in these core updates are kind of secretive. But I don't think you're going to see massive organic ranking changes outside of these core updates, which are not even that massive generally. In terms of search features, yeah, I mean, I still think voice search has some way to go. I think voice search would be really exciting to see how Google changes that in the upcoming future.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, things have kind of changed and shifted around with Google since this whole COVID coronavirus stuff has come out. Their priorities and their teams are all scattered across the place. They've been focusing a lot around COVID-related features and that type of stuff, although that seems to have calmed down a bit in terms of, different markup for different schema and structured data around virtual conferences and anything related to, health and medical facilities and so forth. So those are no-brainers. If you would ask me that 2 months ago, I would have been like, yeah, that's what's coming tomorrow. But we'll see. I mean, I think you're going to start seeing more features around Google Maps and social distancing, and hopefully, more things around, where you can get the shot to get the vaccine, hopefully soon. But outside of that, I don't know. I mean, voice search, I think in the long term is more exciting in terms of how Google is going to give you answers, how they're going to show you those answers later on if you want to do more research. And right now, if you do a voice search, they might add to your Google history the query and show you the results so you can actually click on it later. But it'll be very interesting to see anything around voice search, and maybe if Apple comes out with something around glasses like Google Glass, but for Apple. Cars are going to be very exciting as well. Like I constantly, whenever I used to drive, I don't drive so much now. Apple CarPlay is very big. Android Auto really hasn't taken on as much. So, I mean, it's just so fun to watch how search is embedded throughout our daily lives, from being in our cars to being on our desk, on mobile devices, to being on our, ovens and refrigerators and, thermostats. My thermostat has Alexa built into it. I never use it. I turn it off, but it's there. So it's nice to see this stuff embedded in our daily lives.
Absolutely. So that brings into the question of the EAT as well, right? Because now that all these information are being stacked up, and you definitely have to organize based on who's having a bit more authority and an expert, and so this EAT thing. So for example, companies who are having the spokesperson, is it really required that for some of the B2B queries that people should be representing their CEOs, put for them as the spokesperson so that they improve the EAT for that particular site? Or how does that work? Or is it like the PR people or the content people, they can directly put up their names and start, pushing up content? Because EAT is becoming a more and more important these days. So what is your opinion on how these EAT factors will play a key role with regards to shaping up the future subs?
Yeah, so there are, so Google doesn't mind us saying we should focus on EAT or that type of stuff. It doesn't hurt for them to say that, but they've said numerous times there's no specific ranking signal for E, A, or T. It's not a ranking signal. I know you know that. It's hard. How do you convey you're an expert? How do you convey your authoritative? How do you convey you're trustworthy? People are like, oh, maybe you need to have author bios, and in those author bios, it has to say that this person who's writing this piece of medical advice is a doctor with these credentials. Right. And then Google said, no, we don't really look at that. It's not like we can know for sure that this doctor wrote this, or that, you can fake it. It's easy to fake. So I think it's more about, from what I've heard from Google, more about Google understanding a specific topic by looking at hundreds of thousands of other people writing about that topic.
Yeah.
And if, let's say, 99% of the content on the web say X, but that 1% that you wrote says Y, or maybe 80% of your content saying this and everybody else is saying that, but 20% of your content is not saying it the way people should say it. Maybe Google's able to figure out, based on the content and based on what's going on the web around that content, if that piece of content or your website in general is really authoritative and expert or trustworthy based on what else is going on. So I think it's less about you adding certain structured data or you adding certain author bios or you doing whatever. I think it's more about you making sure that the content you write is well researched, and is really backed by what other people are saying across the web and the scientific community.
Excellent. So we're really gonna miss the SMX live, and I'm sure it's gonna be a virtual event. It's gonna be a big success, I think, because a lot of people, they can't travel and they can now get a chance to attend this SMX live event. And like you mentioned, you're gonna share a detail about a lot of the insights about the algorithm updates. So is there anything that you want to convey to our audience related to SMX this year?
Yes, obviously it's been a pretty big challenge. The last XMX event we had live, at least in person, and it was literally just weeks before all this happened. With the COVID stuff was in February, I believe. XMX West in San Jose, California, next to the Google offices. So that was nice to connect with people. Even then, a lot of people backed out last minute because of, what was going on. So we're trying to do our best to have these events in a safe way. So we're doing XMX Next. Hopefully by the end of the year, maybe XMX East in New York City. Hopefully if we have some type of vaccine or drug that helps with everything, we'll have that. If not, I suspect by early next year, everything will hopefully be back to normal, I hope. As you can imagine, I mean, it's not my business. XMX is something that I'm part of, but it's not necessarily my business, but I don't know the actual financials behind it. But you read about any conference, it's very, very hard for them to run and stay afloat because they make all their money from conferences, and if people aren't flying, people aren't going to conferences, it must be hard. So whatever you could do to support those speakers and these conferences by registering, by going to the events online, and whatever you could do, definitely do that. That'd be great. And if you could help colleagues that are in problem, a lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people are struggling financially. So whatever you guys could do who are watching this to help each other, definitely, do your part, whatever you can do.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Barry, for spending your time with us. I know you're a busy person, so thank you so much for taking your time out and answering all the questions. It was a great.
It's my pleasure. Anytime. Thank you for having me, and hopefully everybody there is doing well. Hopefully you guys are doing well, and hope to see you guys in person, and hopefully sooner than later. So.
Sure. Thank you so much, Barry. Have a great day.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Be well. Bye.
Cool, Barry. So yeah, I think it went well. Thank you so much. You answered
Thank you.
everything.
Have a great day.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.